Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, founder of Thrive Meetings and Events and the Eating at a Meeting podcast, which you're listening to. And this guy over there is Chet Garner.
Hey, Tracy, there.
Hey,
over there.
Hey, yeah, can we touch fingers? Chet Garner. And if you haven't seen him on TV, you need to watch him on TV. He is the creator, host, and executive producer of The Day Tripper, which is a 12-time Emmy-award-winning Texas travel show airing on PBS stations around the country, not just in Texas, but around the country. He lives in Georgetown, Texas, where his base is his show and his wife and 5 kids.
That's right.
Hello, how are you?
Hey. Hey, it's good to see you again, Tracy.
Likewise.
We met up at the Southwest Showcase and you told me what you did and everything. I was like, this is really cool. Yeah. So happy to be here.
Thank you. And you were really cool. I mean, you were the keynote speaker over a lunch and I'm fascinated. I mean, I think Texas is big enough to do day trips all over the town. And you've done it for how many years now? Gosh,
we're in season 13. And for us, it's a season a year. So This summer will mark a full 13 years on the road.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's a lot of trips, a lot of barbecue, a lot of miles.
And speaking of barbecue, on your website, you've said you've eaten 1,000 pounds of barbecue have been devoured.
Give or take. I think that's probably correct. Yeah. It's probably that's probably old even. So update that. I'm just not exactly sure how to measure poundage of barbecue.
You need to talk to
a good formula.
You need to talk to Aaron in Austin and ask him what best way to measure.
Yeah.
Sure. Somebody just tagged on here that they love the Day Tripper. So I got to come over here to LinkedIn and see who that was. Karen Fogel out of Plano, Texas. Hello, my friend. So 13 years of doing this. What prompted you to do this?
Oh man. I was a disgruntled attorney. I'll put it that way. I was doing a job that I just wasn't passionate about, and I love travel. And I realized, and I've traveled a lot all over the globe, and it occurred to me that, that there were all these amazing things in Texas that people didn't know about. And so, you had people, just not appreciating what was in their own backyard. And so I'm like, man, I wish I could make a living storytelling and sharing all the goodness of Texas with folks. It's like Texans need more reasons to be proud of our state, right?
Right.
So anyway, it was kind of like, man, I was kind of a fish out of water as an attorney. I love school and I love learning. And so I continued down that path thinking it would open up some doors. But when I found myself in a job that I just wasn't passionate about, I thought, man, I got to pivot. I got to find something else to do. And so we created the show called The Day Tripper. And the purpose really was like, let's share Texas for Texans. But of course, the show has now a national footprint. And I think people just love learning about Texas. Texas has kind of a mythos to it. And we get a little loud and proud sometimes, but people, there's an intrigue there as to who Texans are. How we live, the history, the food, and all of that. I mean, Texas barbecue has never been more popular across the globe. And so it's been fun. It was really just a way to inspire people to appreciate what's in their own backyard. And I think that message is universal, regardless of where you live. It's like, why spend all this money to go somewhere exotic when you haven't even visited the place that people from around the globe are coming to in your own backyard? Right. There's no reason, Texans, there's no, I'm still a fan of national, international travel, but don't be so disgruntled because you don't have time for this big grand vacation when you're not even going on the little day trip to your own backyard. Like that can help you sort of feed that wanderlust inside of you. And so that was the impetus. I jokingly say I created a TV show to inspire people to watch less TV. That was the goal.
That's a great idea. Well, and the fact that you say that, just a week and a half ago, I went down to Fort Macon, which is 30 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
And 45, and I'd never been there. And it's got a great 3.3 mile walk on it that's on the ocean as well as in salt marshes and things like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Awesome. Right. Yeah. And I've lived here for 3 years and I had never been. So
yeah. And I mean, that just showcases the point. I mean, I'm guilty too. I haven't explored everything. I mean, there's things in my own backyard that I neglect, that I overlook. And you go out there and you're like, wow, like if I were, let's just put myself in Maine and I found this trail, I'd be like, this is the greatest trail ever. But we lose that objectivity when we're talking about things that are just so accessible for us. And so it's kind of like just cut through all that. Like, this is absolutely awesome. And it's in your own backyard. So like, take advantage of it,
100%. And one of the reasons that I thought you would be great for the show too, is because for me, meeting planners, when they're bringing events to Texas, they want to find some unique things to do in the state as well. And your show can actually help do that and highlight some things that they would never have thought of. And maybe a destination management company didn't even know about. Right. Yeah.
No. Oh, that's very true. Like, obviously, if you're planning a meeting, you're not going to spend the entire time in a conference room. Right. You got to get out and go and see, especially if it's a multi-day conference kind of thing. And so I say this, I'm very proud. We've brought a lot of attention to kind of those mid-level towns that have an incredible amount to do. And they've got a decent conference center or meeting hall, but people just weren't looking at them because they thought, there's nothing to do. Why in the world would I drag people to San Angelo, Texas or Granbury, Texas or whatever? And then, you start to show them like, oh gosh, we'd have a ton of fun doing it. Right. And so that's been really neat because, we don't charge the towns at all to visit them. That's not our model. We're funded by sponsors, and then we get to say whatever we want about the towns and just promote them. And when I see this actually begin to really be an economic boost for these towns, that gets me fired up, because small towns need all the help they can get.
Yeah, for sure. And my niece and I drove from North Carolina, New Orleans to Austin and then up to Denver. So we saw a bunch of the small towns as we were driving through Texas and didn't stop at all of them. But it definitely
it's been a lifetime. I hadn't even been to all of them, Tracy. I mean, you really would.
After 13 years, you haven't been to all of them?
Close. We have 254 counties in Texas, and I haven't even been to all the counties.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So I'm about 20 short.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. But I'm still not in the 254 club. That's like a thing in Texas.
Oh, is it really?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Wow.
To just put your foot in every county, or people have different goals. They want to take a picture with all the county courthouses, or they want to eat barbecue in every county. Mm-hmm. But some of the counties literally have a population of less than 100 people in the entire county. So there's
holy moly.
We're not exactly like planning lots of day trips in these remote destinations.
Well, their ranches have got to be really huge then, because it's taking up the whole county.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So because this show is about eating, how do you, in all of the shows that you've done, I know you said just before we got on the broadcast, there's usually 2 meals per show that you've done. So, but how does food and beverage play into the culture of Texas? And is it different from El Paso down to Austin and vice versa?
Oh, man. Food is at the heart of the culture of Texas because, it is the table that brings us all together. And it's the table where families are forged and family legacies and so much in Texas, all going back to the history of our state, has been sort of crafted around food. Where can you get food, eat food, hunt food, gather food? And then Texas is unique because we've been at this crossroads of all of these different cultures. And so you've got the Spanish and Mexican influence coming from the South. You've had Native Americans. You've had the Southern cuisine that's trickled in. And then Texas coast was a huge immigration port. And so you have, it was right behind Ellis Island. So you think of New York being like, oh, this huge place with all these great cultures, where Galveston and a little town called Indianola were right behind that. So you had Germans, Czechs, Polish, Italians, everybody was coming to Texas. And so there's this big mishmash of culture, and the state's so big that we've got all these different regional cuisines that are fantastic. And so like, if you want to understand a culture, you need to understand what they eat, because so much of their history is wrapped up in the food that they form. And like, one of my favorite things, Texas has a few of these. Like, we have regional dishes that you can only find in like one little area of Texas, and they don't exist outside of them. Like, no one makes them. And so I grew up in Southeast Texas, and barbecue crabs were just ubiquitous. And barbecued crabs. And so they're deep fried. They're not even barbecued at all, but they're blue crabs. They get dusted into seasoning, and they get deep fried. And then we would sit around tables with this literally like a pile of crabs, and you would just go there and you'd go after it for an hour or two, drink a beer with your buddies. And then I came to UT in Austin and started looking for barbecue crabs, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And then come to find out, like, they're like, what, y'all don't eat barbecue crabs? That's impossible. Then they're like, we've never even heard of it. You're you Cajun, get back in the swamps. And so come to find out, they don't exist outside of the county I grew up in. They just don't.
Wow. So, and I grew up in Maryland, and so I have Maryland blue steamed crabs. So they're steamed, they're not fried.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. See, if I trip to Maryland, the first thing I would do would be to eat those crabs. I get fired up by that. A couple weeks ago, I found another one of these little regional delicacies at in a French town, and it was at a meat market, and it's called parisa. It is raw steak ground with cheese, jalapenos, and onions. And then it just comes out of the grinder like it's going to be in sausage, but it doesn't go into sausage. They put it in a pile and you eat it on crackers. Totally raw. And it was delicious. It was delicious. And it doesn't exist outside of this town and one other town. And so like, I love stuff like that. And of course, I could talk for hours about Tex-Mex culture, where that came from, barbecue, where that came from. And then, chili, which is like a Mexican, it's the whole base of the Texas food pyramid practically.
Well, and go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, how much do you want to know? We can start the master's class. I love food. Food tells a story. It really does.
It does. And I know in San Antonio, and I've had a couple of women from San Antonio, it's a city of gastronomy. Yeah. So, it's actually been named a city of gastronomy.
Who does that? I didn't know that. San Antonio can eat good. And there's like a taco war between San Antonio and Austin about who has the better tacos. But I think it's San Antonio.
Well, and it's actually my friend in San Antonio actually posted something that says, I react to the word tacos as dogs react to the word walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, has named San Antonio a city of gastronomy.
City of gastronomy. Okay. Sounds fancy.
I know. It does.
That's cool.
So where is there a food that you've really, besides the raw beef with cheese in it, is there any other food that you've eaten? Snake?
Rattlesnake. There's the rattlesnake roundup in Sweetwater, Texas, that all these ranchers bring in rattlesnakes that have kind of infested their land, and they weigh them, do a little research on them, and then they chop them and put them in the deep fryer, and everybody eats them. It's pretty crazy. And if you want to, you can skin and gut your very first rattlesnake right there on site. It's wild. And so rattlesnake for sure. One thing, we were down in the valley, the Rio Grande Valley, which are really rich Mexican traditions, and they were making authentic barbacoa, which is cooked with a cow head in the ground. I took it out. The owner's like, "Oh, hey, it still has the ojo. You want to try it, Chet?" I was like, "Oh no!" And then so he literally, ojo means eyeball. For those that don't know, it's like full cow head with the eyeball still in the socket, and he plucks it out, puts it on a tortilla with a little salsa, and hands it to me. I was like, oh, anyway, but I'm a good sport. I'm like, as long as it's not going to kill me, I'm going to eat it. But it was terrible. It really wasn't. It wasn't good at all. Barbacoa is delicious. Don't eat the eyeball.
What's the rest of barbacoa though?
It's just the cow face meat. So it's mostly the cheek meat. And so you've got these big jowls on a cow that you can pull off. The meat is incredibly tender if you cook it long enough. And then there's some other pieces of face meat that you can get out of there, as well as the tongue, chop the tongue up. It's, Texas for most of its history has been a pretty poor state. And so, we had to learn how to utilize every piece of the cow. From nose to tail.
Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
And it's in other cultures, and actually apparently in Texas too, I mean, they do eat it from nose to tail. So it's important. Yeah.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Well, and I noticed, and this is really mean for all those people, but it's Easter coming up and you have on your blog, 5 places to eat rabbit in Texas.
I'm going to sound like this wild cowboy. Kill it, eat it. If it moves, eat it. But hey, I believe that we've got animals to enjoy, steward well, of course, but to enjoy for sure. And rabbit, if you ain't never had rabbit, it is delicious. Now, there's not a lot of meat on a rabbit. So, it's typically served with the bone in, like you'll get a rabbit quarter that you got to kind of pull apart. But yes, indeed, there are places that have rabbit. One of the absolute best, it's rabbit and dumplings with biscuits on it in Contigo in Austin, which is very much one of those like nose to tail sort of places. Right. It's funny, like that's become a big trend nowadays, but in Texas, that's something we've been doing since the very beginning. Right. And so, oh gosh, rabbit, gravy, biscuits. How could that not be good, Tracy? It tastes kind of like dark meat chicken, if you want to know.
Okay. All right.
Kind of like squirrel, if you've ever had squirrel.
No, I have not had squirrel. I have a whole bunch of them in the backyard, but I am not going to go do what you just did. Yeah. No, thanks. Okay. So let's talk about different types of places to eat. So I saw, there's high-end restaurants, there's cafes. I know that you had a blog about cozy cafes, ranches. Any favorites, or is the whole gamut?
I'm always looking for a mom and pop restaurant. That's what I love. I love supporting local businesses and the people who work in the restaurant industry, especially the mom and pop restaurants. The restaurant industry as a whole work harder than anyone else I know and often have thankless jobs, especially in the era of the internet. We can go out and we can bash a restaurant for any number of reasons. Right. And we don't thank them enough. I've been in enough restaurants to know, like, I don't ever want to run a restaurant. I don't ever want to own one. Like, I'm happy, like, to pay you whatever you want. We'll sit down and eat the food because it is a tough job. So I'm always looking for the mom and pop places, where someone's back there and it's truly a passion that's coming out. And you find that in a cafe, barbecue joint. You can find that in a high-end steakhouse as well. But if you're going through a small town, you want to look for the fullest parking lot possible. And it might be the dirtiest building you've ever seen. But if the parking lot is full, it's going to be awesome. And especially if there's police cars. If the sheriff is there or the police cars are there, that's the joint right there. So
that's a really good tip.
Yeah. Because the cops and sheriffs, they know where to eat. So
that's a really good point. Okay, so one of the cities that my niece and I drove through was Amarillo. So where in Amarillo? Yeah. Do you have a place in Amarillo?
Love Amarillo.
I almost got bit by a dog, but
what?
Yeah.
Were you trying to pet a stray dog? No. Well, sorry about that. If it gets too close to a barbecue joint, we may eat it. I'm just kidding. We don't eat dog. We eat a lot of weird stuff. We do not eat dog. But there's a place, I think, if you're starting in Amarillo, like Amarillo, right? Ranching town, cows. So you're going to find incredible barbecue burgers, steaks. But one of my favorite places, if you're just passing through Amarillo, is the Big Texan Steak Ranch. And you might have heard of this. They offer a free 72-ounce steak. Free 72. So that's 4.5 pounds. And they give it to you absolutely free if you can eat it in an hour. So you have to eat the thing. But you also have to eat the baked potato, the shrimp cocktail, the roll, and the side salad. And if you can suck that thing down in an hour, you get it absolutely free. But it is like that, people like nowadays like love those food competitions. That's kind of the thing. This is the OG, the founder. If they weren't the first, they were one of the first in the entire country that did a food challenge. And it is like a classic Texas place. Like,
wow,
it's awesome. It's on the old Route 66, and it's got a vibe. It's got a vibe to it for sure.
Would they give me a gluten-free bun? Because I wouldn't be able to finish. I wouldn't be able to win because I couldn't eat the bun.
If you eat the steak, Tracy, and all you have left is the bun, I will buy the steak for you. All right.
Okay,
like that is amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I tried it and I got about half of it down and felt like I was about to die. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a beast. I mean, it comes out like a suitcase of meat. And, it's a whole sirloin, and then they kind of cut it and fillet it open and stuff. And, oh, gosh, it's a lot. It's intense.
Wow. That's a lot of food.
So, but, there's, the one of the fun places, too, in Amarillo is you can go eat in the stockyards. So, in Texas, we have cattle auctions pretty much in every county. Some of them have multiple cattle auctions. And so right next to the auction barn is typically a cafe where the ranchers will come in and eat breakfast or lunch, just depending on how long the auction goes. So if one of those is open, stop in because you're going to get the best chicken fried steak you ever ate in your life, typically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So fried steak, fried crabs.
Yeah.
I see a trend.
We fry. Man, there's a new show I just learned about on A&E that's called Deep Fried Dynasty that follows all the people at the State Fair of Texas who basically are trying to create the craziest deep fried concoction they can. So at the State Fair, you've got fried. Yeah, that's where we came up with like fried pizza, fried Oreos, but now they're doing fried butter, fried gumbo, fried beer, fried. I mean, it's wild.
That is wild. Okay, so let's talk about diversity. I mean, we kind of talked about it, but one of the things that you said to me before the show was that the food, you try to find places that are authentic with their food and with the freshest ingredients. Talk about that a little bit in the travels to 200 and something.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love it when I go to a restaurant and I try to order what I think I want and they say, sorry, we didn't make that. It's not in season, because that means that they're actually paying attention and changing their menu up based on the seasons, which is how we should be eating anyway. I mean, that's like, it's so much better to find local vendors, and whether that's the meat, which I mean, beef's always in season, but like whether it's the meat or the chicken or the produce or just the beets on the side of the salad or whatever. I hate beets, by the way.
Oh, I love them.
I'll go lick a bag of mulch soil if I want to be. But you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like the dessert when they're like, oh, it's peach cobbler, but these are Fredericksburg peaches, and we only make this in June, July, and August because that's when the peaches are coming in. So I think it shows an incredible amount of focus and attention to the food. And if a place cares that much, the food's going to be awesome. The food is absolutely going to be awesome. So I do look for that. I want places that are authentic to the region where they are. For instance, I'm not going to eat Tex-Mex in El Paso because El Paso doesn't really do Tex-Mex. They do chili sauce. So Tex-Mex is all about chili con carne, which is meat chili on top of a dish. But like you go to El Paso, you start to drift over into that Southwest cuisine. And so that's all about pureed chili pods. So your verde and your red chili pods, but no meat is going to go in the sauce on the enchiladas. And so like, if I'm there, that's what I'm going to eat. I'm not going to eat Tex-Mex because it's not what they do. It's not what they've done for forever. In the same way, like, I'm not going to go down to the Texas coast and order a piece of swordfish like that. Who knows where that came from, but I'm going to order a piece of redfish or trout or flounder. Something that got caught right there. So that's, I do love it when places kind of like recognize their region. They recognize the influences of the cultures of their region. And, you know, a lot of them were raised there. And so they're continuing on kind of what that area is known for, the things they grew up on, you know?
I was going to say the mom and pops are making the mom and pop food.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I love to do. Not to say you can't find great Cajun food in Amarillo, but I'm not gonna seek out a Cajun restaurant in Amarillo.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But then I also love the fact that with what you just said too, like in San Antonio, but coming up from Mexico and South America, but you ate Hungarian, and the ethnicity of the people who came from other countries that have brought it into that Tex-Mex.
Yeah, see, that's really fun. Like, we found a Hungarian restaurant in Kilgore, Texas, which is the East Texas. And normally I'd be like, I'm not gonna eat Hungarian food in Kilgore, but I'm like, wait, what? I've never come across, in all my years, I've never come across another Hungarian restaurant. There must be a story here. And come to find out, you know, Hungarian to the core, making traditional Hungarian food because the ingredients they could find here, right? Or they're importing what they couldn't, like Hungarian paprika and Hungarian sausage. But you can find cabbage here and ground beef and stuff like that. And so finding food that's also authentic to the proprietors, right? And so that was one of the best meals I've had, just because you could tell these people, like, this was the way they were sharing their culture and homeland with their patrons. And so you felt that, like, this was a business. This was a pitch to everybody who walked in their doors. Like, you love Hungarian food, and let me make you the best Hungarian food you ever had to prove that you love this stuff and you love our country. And, you know, like, the world can seem huge until you sort of start breaking it down. And part of it, I think, part of crossing cultural lines is like sitting around a table with someone eating their food, and you realize, like, oh, I didn't know I liked Ethiopian food.
Right.
Gosh, but this isn't that crazy. I mean, these are familiar flavors, and they're like, yeah, you know, we're all the same at our heart. You know, humans love fat, sugar, and salt, and that's what we love. And so you put that in anything, you're going to have a winner. True.
It's so true. And we all have to eat. And when we share our food, it just makes it so much better.
It does.
And sharing food made with heart as well.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And, like, you know, if you have a good meal at a meeting, or you're on location somewhere for a conference, and you go out with people you don't really know, but you sit down at a cool place and have a Texas steak, you're making a bond with those people that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. Because when we gather around the table, it just sort of brings us together. And it's inclusive of the food at a meeting itself. Like, that's a moment that someone's like, yeah, we got to eat lunch. Like, you don't realize, like, that might be one of the most important parts of all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, one of my friends is like, he said, don't quiz me after the event about how the food was. See how I engaged with other people, about my experience overall, and then look at and see. But use the food as a way to enhance that engagement.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Don't ask if the chicken was dry. It might have been, but don't ask that.
Yeah. But did it facilitate kind of meeting other people, sharing stories, and the food you have at the meeting or like at a conference offsite? Super important. Right. To go find a local place that is making something local that's going to create a memory and a bond with the people.
Right. Exactly. And then actually my friend Zoe one time said to me on the show, she's like, don't have the line cook make the sushi. Bring in that Hungarian chef, not to make sushi, but bring in that Hungarian chef to show the authenticity within that town that you're in of that food, versus just having a line cook. Nothing against them, but you're bringing in more of that authenticity. Oh,
totally. And you can tell. I mean, it does. Like, you can absolutely tell when something's made with a passion and when it's not.
Right. Yeah.
And a line cook at a conference center, nothing against them. They work incredibly hard. Right. But they're not passionate typically about what they're doing.
And they're just doing the same menus over and over.
Yeah. I mean, they got to crank out a few hundred of these things, and, you know, it's a job.
Right. Exactly. All right. So I want to know, what would be the meal that you want to eat before you die?
Ooh. Okay. This hasn't changed in 20 years.
Okay.
But if I know I'm going to die, I want a big old plate of Texas barbecue. I need the Texas Trinity. You know what the Texas Trinity is?
I don't know what the Texas Trinity is.
All right, you could probably guess, but brisket, sausage, and ribs. That's your Texas Trinity. And so, at the good places, it's served by the pound on a platter. And you got your meats. Then I maybe give me some pinto beans and potato salad, and then a big thing of peach cobbler or banana pudding. I'd have to think through that one for dessert. And that'd be it. I could go out happy.
Okay. And I want to ask, who would you want to be sitting there with you eating that meal?
Oh man. Well, if my wife's still around, my wife and kids, if they're still around, then good. For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Well, some people might not think, unless they watch your show, like day tripping doesn't have anything to do with food, but it does.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out.
Well, yeah, any kind of travel has food somewhere because we're humans. We have to live to eat. We have to eat to live.
Right.
I live to eat and eat to live as well. So, but I've learned that food is the great uniter. It's the thing that we all share in common. Not everybody loves hiking and not everybody loves going to museums, but pretty much everybody loves eating. And our show kind of showcases all of it. But I've realized like the crux, the thing people gravitate to is definitely the food. Always is. Hey, Tracy, what's the last meal you're going to eat before you die?
My goodness.
Back on you.
Oh, that's a great question. I always have to go back to blueberries. You could fill my house up with blueberries.
Fresh blueberries or
fresh blueberries? Yes.
You make like blueberry cake, blueberry muffins, blueberry.
I would just eat blueberries.
Okay, just straight.
And my favorite pie is cherry pie. So with the fresh.
Why not blueberry pie? Blueberry pie is awesome.
It is awesome. I don't know. I mean, I grew up making my fresh crust with Crisco and water and flour and every Christmas and Thanksgiving. And it's the only time I eat it. Yeah.
You're making me hungry.
With my fresh Oregon cherries, the tart cherries from Oregon in the can.
Ooh, I love, yeah. Oregon cherries. When those hit Texas in the summertime, we eat pounds upon pounds upon pounds of them.
My dad and I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're so good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, eating, I wouldn't say it was a pound of, a Texas, what did you call it? A Texas what?
Texas Trinity.
Trinity. Yeah. No. Trinity.
Yeah. It's just Texas barbecue, but it's it's like your three meat plate.
Things, yeah.
Yeah.
I do probably need to get down and eat some barbecue from Aaron in Austin because he came to the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival when I worked that event in 2012 and 13, but I never got to eat it then. I need him.
Franklin Barbecue. Just go early. Like, you got to have 2 hours to sort of sit there and wait in line.
Right. So exactly.
People bring a cooler, a Lone Star beer, and then you just sit on it and wait. And then you're especially, it's all a plan to make you like insanely hungry so that you order like 4 times the amount any normal human could eat. And then he sells out faster. And
I know. I was going to say, right? Yeah. You order 4 times and then I get there and there's nothing left to eat. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So, all right, Chet, you've got to go produce another episode or edit another episode.
I'm editing a Fort Worth episode that'll come out in next month. So we're finishing it up.
How often are your shows?
Well, we make 13 a year, but they they come on every week. It's either new or reruns.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Yeah. And can you tell anybody any fun where you're going next? Let's
see. My next trip, we actually just wrapped up the season, but we went to some fun places that'll come out in May. Let's see. We have an episode on Green, Texas, which is north of San Antonio. That's like a very country Texas town, oldest dance hall in Texas, Guadalupe River, beautiful town. Then Liberty Hill, which is kind of one of those under the radars that everybody like. I love making episodes about towns when you tell people you go and they're like, what's there to do there? And then you realize like, oh gosh, I want to go. Castroville, which is west of San Antonio. Then we finished the season with a Dallas episode and a Fort Worth episode.
And you could probably go to Dallas and Fort Worth multiple times.
Oh, yeah. We've already done episodes on both of those towns. So this is kind of like the return trip where you either pick a different region of town or a different theme or something like that. So it's fun. It's super
cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for showing us around Texas. And
my pleasure.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm kind of passionate about this. This is what I love. I love doing. I love talking about. And, it's a thing that I hope to do until I die. Truthfully. I love it.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. I mean, people need to know more about our own country, like you said at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Explore what we have already.
There's people all over the world who want to come to Texas. And it doesn't matter where you live. I mean, Maryland, anywhere. Like there's people from other places that want to go there.
Right.
So, you just have to take that, just be objective. Why is it that I'm trying to leave for every vacation and then turn it back in and be like, oh, yeah, it's that thing. Like, you don't do the tourist stuff until friends come to visit you or family comes to town. Like, why aren't you doing this more often? Like, these are the things that make your city or state great.
Right.
So,
well, and a lot of times visitors want to go to the dives or the local places. They don't want to go to the tourist places because they want to get the authenticity of that place. So,
totally.
Well, I love it. So thank you very much for what you do.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me on, Tracy.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.